This is why lobotomy is the worst surgery in history.
That would be perfect for those who suffer from stress and anxiety, heal depression, insomnia, eliminate suicidal thoughts, delusions, hallucinations, melancholy, and obsessions.
This is how, in the 1930s, American newspapers advertised not chamomile tea or sessions with a psychologist, but an ice pick put in your head. Or in other words,
how do they do that in like the early or like mid 1900s without murdering someone? Like you're shoving an ice pick through their eyeball into their brain, or like drilling a hole in their head, or is that the same thing? Or is that, oh my God, is the lobotomy the same thing as when they would drill a hole in your head? Yeah, lobotomy is through the eye. That's nuts though. That people would sign up for this surgery, trusting their doctor that this would not go wrong. And we're just gonna numb you a little bit. You're not gonna be able to pass out because we don't really have anesthesia yet. But we're gonna shove an ice pick through the top of your eyelid, into your head, and then wiggle it around a bit, and you'll feel a little bit better. Does that sound good? Oh, you're a little nervous about your upcoming test this week? Why don't we give you a lobotomy?
Lobotomy. Egas Moniz, the father of lobotomy, was awarded the Nobel Prize for inventing this barbaric surgery. But what if the award was well-deserved? In this video, I'll tell you.
Aren't lobotomies not, like, they don't actually work, right? I thought lobotomies were just bullshit. They don't do that anymore. He got a Nobel Prize for that. Figuring out you could shove. How do you even determine that? Oh yeah, let me just shove a little metal rod up your eye. Like, how does he know that that would work? His medical practice? Lobotomy is just murder without the death?
Replace an enema in treating stomach disorders. Does the ice pick in the skull affect a person's character? And most importantly, could people be wrong in banning lobotomy?
Did they actually use an ice pick? They didn't use like a fucking like medical instrument? They would actually use a full-blown ice pick?
In the early 20th century, a mentally ill person was an awful stigma to their family. Society used to believe that those people didn't deserve to live. That's why they were treated worse than criminals. They were locked up in prisons, tortured, or killed. Mental hospitals were supposed to become a humane alternative, but they didn't. Patients were chained to walls or beds, got electrocuted, or forced to take antipsychotic drugs. They could be kept in asylums for years without visible improvement signs. But the lobotomy changed everything.
Oh my God, you actually just use a hammer and an ice pick. Oh, what do you even do? You just like incision it and then take it back out? Or do you have to like fucking reach something?
First of all, it let people who suffered from mental disorders avoid ending up in an asylum. It sounds a bit paradoxical.
Does it hurt? Does it hurt? I don't know. Do you think if I shoved a large metal rod into your brain that it would feel good?
Just like if I said we should rescue flu patients from cough syrup, especially since a lobotomy...
Bro, that looks like it's going into their eye. That doesn't look like it's going to the side or the fucking, like, above it. No way, and you fucking mallet it in? What the fuck?
Lobotomy looked no less frightening than mental hospitals. The surgery was performed using a device that resembled a regular ice pick. Instead of anesthesia, a patient was electrocuted so that they lost consciousness.
When did they did this to JFK's sister? Bro, that wasn't even that long ago. They would electrocute you so you would pass out and then shove a rod in your head. What if you died?
Then the ice pick was pushed inside the eye socket and hammered through the orbit bone that's as thin as an eggshell. The surgeon would sweep the instrument from side to side to cut the connections between the frontal lobes and the rest of the brain. All of that could last just...
What? And they thought that was a good idea? Yeah, let's just separate the brain bits. Oh yeah, those connections. Let's just get them out of here. No, that's not like biology doing its work or anything. Let's just fucking remove them.
Minutes, and boom, an aggressive patient who was dangerous to society became obedient and submissive within minutes. Yes, that's quite a dangerous practice.
Holy shit! Holy shit! No, this can't be real.
Yes, that's quite a dangerous
Bro, he's just hammering it in.
practice, but it spared people many years of enduring barbaric and excruciating therapies and specialized facilities. The most famous patient who underwent the lobotomy is Rosemary Kennedy.
When did she get a lobotomy? 1941. He arranged her to get a lobotomy. Dude, I would just be like, fuck you. I'm not getting a lobotomy. They couldn't refuse that? They were just forced to get it?
A sister of the U.S. President John Kennedy. The young woman faced slight developmental delays that impacted her school performance in her childhood and young adulthood. However, as Rosemary grew older, she experienced seizures and temper tantrums and later became aggressive towards other people. In 1941, when the woman turned 23, she was lobotomized. As a result, she stopped being prone to violence and dangerous to society. Whereas Howard Dully had surgery when he was a 12-year-old boy, and he's still alive. In his childhood, Howard lost his mother, which negatively affected his mental state.
He's still alive? What are they like? What happens if... Dude, if you sever, parts of your brain, are you there?
Towards his mother-in-law. The woman feared for her life because of her son-in-law's unruly and violent behavior. For that reason, it was decided to
Bro, but he's 12. Maybe he'll just grow out of it. He's just a naggy 12-year-old. He complains. Oh my God.
Lobotomize the child. He's 72 now, and he has no history of any sort of trouble over this time. Lobotomy became a magic wand that, by touching a specific spot on the human skull, turned a villain into a good guy. But how did people understand which parts of the brain affect human behavior and how?
And you can't even see it. You're just feeling around. You're just like, no, that feels like the right spot. All right, give me the hammer. Fucking jam that shit in there.
During archaeological excavations all around the globe, researchers found...
Why does it have to go through the eye? Why not the side? What do you mean, why not the side? Like your ear? If they just jammed it through your head, you would die. Because it would go through your bones. And then it would go through the wrong part of your brain. Through your eye, you're not going through a bone because it's already a hole. If your eyes weren't there, it would just be a hole.
Lots of skulls with holes. It's assumed that it was a method our ancestors used to treat headaches. Theories suggesting that every part of the brain is responsible for some particular...
That's crazy motherfuckers thought, yeah, I have a headache. Let me just rip a hole in my skull.
Function appeared long ago in the ancient world. It's believed that some areas in the frontal lobe control our thinking, will, initiative, and decision-making. Egas Moniz considered that assumption and summarized the knowledge of his head wounds during the First World War. And then he thought, what if some injuries inflicted on the frontal lobe of the brain could be helpful in some way? What if that could let us modify human behavior? At the Neurological Congress, he learned that scientists had already removed monkeys' cerebral cortex parts. The apes continued to live after that, but were no longer restless. Moniz came up with the idea that perhaps people with psychotic disorders could be treated the same way. That was when he...
Wait, so do lobotomies actually work?
...started drilling heads of mentally unstable people. And it worked. The lobotomy gradually became a solution to deal with those who were a menace to society. Nobody ever questioned the effectiveness of the lobotomy because doctors didn't fully understand how the brain worked.
I feel like there's some sort of negative to it afterwards.
But they believe that the lobotomy helped, according to the traditions of our ancestors, teachings on the spots of the skull, and miraculous examples of healing. The lobotomy was believed to be the best cure for rebellious daughters. We now know that hormonal surges
you're
and
a little bit edgy in the 50s. All right, shove an ice pick in her skull. She wasn't home for dinner last night. Yep, all right, we're getting you a lobotomy.
Swings are typical during puberty, and that there's nothing abnormal about that. But back then, society saw a fiery temper of a young lady as poor etiquette, and a lobotomy made her calm and obedient. LGBTQ plus people used to be diagnosed with attachment disorder. That meant the patient was
If you were gay, they would give you a lobotomy.
attached to inappropriate erotic and sexual desires. Doctors believe that using various stressors like an electric shock or skull drilling could modify the behavior and lead to heterosexuality and recovery. But the thing is, diagnoses like that were made up not even by doctors, but rather by relatives of supposedly ill people. Nobody asked them if they agreed to undergo a lobotomy. The operation was forced on the patients by their families. At the same time, doctors didn't mind and eagerly helped, but all they had on their minds was making money. However, the situation rapidly changed, and soon people started joining the queue for the lobotomy. But why?
People wanted to get a lobotomy? I thought it would all be forced.
All came down to Walter Freeman, a neurologist and psychiatrist. But I'd instead call him a showman and the best marketing specialist in human history. Freeman wasn't even a surgeon, and as a matter of fact, couldn't operate on his patients himself. That didn't stop him, though. Egas Moniz said that a lobotomy was an extreme measure, but Freeman made drilling holes in a human skull a panacea for all problems, including waywardness and violent nature. He promoted it as a treatment that was only slightly riskier than tooth extraction. Freeman started offering his services while traveling around to different countries, just like Lady Gaga with the monster.
He would just do a makeshift lobotomy on a kitchen table, just like for free. All right, I'll give you a lobotomy. Lay down.
Ball tour. He turned the operation into a big show. For example, he shocked his audience, doctors and nurses, by simultaneously performing lobotomies on 2 patients. He got so many fans that he once operated on 25 women in just one day. As time passed, Freeman started to assure people that the lobotomy could cure everything, even indigestion. A broader spectrum of disease.
What makes you feel different? Just because the connections are separated?
Is potentially curable by
No, this literally just seems like some fucking old-ass 1600s, like, fucking showman on the street trying to make money. But he's performing surgeries to your head.
Lobotomy meant a more significant number of clients. They should have made him a marketing specialist at Quibi, then it indeed wouldn't have shut down. If Freeman could brainwash people into believing that driving an ice pick through their heads was cool, then the Quibi show about a girl who made friends with her boyfriend's sex doll would have become a Golden Globe nominee.
What is Quibi? What the fuck is Quibi? Quibi, is that like a different streaming service that existed? A show about a girl that befriends her brother's sex doll? That's an ad? No, they were saying it went bankrupt. He was making fun of it. It still exists? Oh, I Googled it and X videos showed up. That's not good. Okay. Dummy is the name of the show with Anna Kendrick, the girl from Pitch Perfect. Dude, it came out 3 years ago. There's a trailer for it. It's a movie and a comedy series. What?
Ice pick through their heads was cool. Then the Quibi show about a girl who made friends with her boyfriend's sex doll would have become a Golden Globe nominee. Anyway, was Freeman's product as good as its wrapping? What really happened to patients after the lobotomy? Freeman kept quiet about many things in his ad campaign. The barbaric procedure resulted in the death of at least 490 people and made thousands of others go on living in a vegetative state. They lost their...
because if you fuck up the surgery, like if you fucking, you're not even looking where you're doing this. You jam the ice pick in or whatever it looks like an ice pick, and then you fucking hit the wrong part of the brain, they'll just die.
Ability to react to the outside world and even themselves. And what about those whose surgeries were allegedly successful? Before she went through the treatment, Rosemary Kennedy was just a short-tempered kid with a restless mind. Her family concluded that that could reflect badly on her brother's career, so they turned to Freeman. After the...
No, Nah, they gave her a lobotomy so Kennedy would be a president easier.
Lobotomy. Kennedy's mental capacity diminished to that of a 2-year-old child. She lost most of her ability to walk and talk intelligibly. And in that condition,
That's her? Bro, and the family don't feel bad about that? Like, I would be like, wow, you guys are fucking terrible parents.
Talk intelligibly. And in that condition, it's difficult to argue with your parents, isn't it? In his memoirs, the other patient, Howard Dully, who went through the lobotomy at the age of 12...
I feel like it looks worse for your presidential career if your fucking sister was forced to get a lobotomy by their parents, rather than having a sister with a little bit of a short temper.
Recalls that his stepmother hated him, and he never understood why. One of the reasons Howard's father's new love decided that the kid needed the lobotomy was his weird behavior. He would turn on the lights in a room when the sun was still shining. Is that a good reason?
But he's wasting electricity. He turned the lights on. He turned the lights on. The lights out. The sun's out. He turned the lights on. Let's drill a hole in his head.
For punishing a child. And what if Howard had broken a cup, which he sentenced him to an electric chair? After Freeman performed the surgery, Howard, in fact, became incapacitated and got thrown out of his own house. That was followed by depression, which he tried to get rid of abusing alcohol and drugs. It took years for him to get his life in order. He told about his pain in a book called My Lobotomy. Howard was fortunate to survive the procedure and to even write his memoirs.
Wow.
Other patients were not so blessed. Most patients who suffered the lobotomy were sent back to asylums. The thing is, a patient's character is in no way influenced by their sex, age, level of education, and most certainly it can't be changed by drilling their skull. Scientists were wrong. And the resulting brain injury didn't transform patients into placid and balanced people. It just transformed them into disabled humans. But this wasn't acknowledged until
So they were only they formed it and took the pictures to make it seem like, oh, they're just better now. They're not angry anymore. But the reason they're not angry anymore is because they can't function. They can't walk. They can barely move. They're fucking incapacitated to the point where, like, yeah, of course they're fucking complacent because they can't think.
1967, when lobotomies were finally banned. Now people are treated in a far more humane way through psychological therapy sessions. And a person's short temper or sexual orientation are no longer stigmas to be ashamed of. To the present day, there are numerous calls to rescind Moniz's Nobel Prize for developing lobotomy. But so far, no luck. The mind boggles at thinking what could have happened if this surgery hadn't been banned eventually. Who do you think could be prescribed the lobotomy nowadays? And what ailments could be treated with an ice pick
Yo, on God, chat, y'all think I would have gotten a lobotomy by now?
brain? Unwillingness to eat asparagus, uncontrollable
I fucking hate asparagus.
scrolling through TikTok, or an overwhelming...
I think, in all honesty, I think if lobotomies were still around and it were like the 50s, I think all of us probably would have had to get a lobotomy. I think literally everybody here. Just because it seems like they were just handing out lobotomies if you, like, oh, you didn't like your broccoli. Oh, you're rebellious. Well, let me shove an ice pick in your skull.